The latest tech.
People love iPhone, and it's an important part of our daily lives.
Interviews.
You see far too many products that come on the market that you look at that you say, was a blind person ever even consulted for something like this?
Accessibility.
The most interesting thing over the last couple of years is the emphasis on gaming and accessibility.
This is Double Tap TV.
Welcome to a special one-hour episode of Double Tap TV. I am Stephen Scott.
And I am Marc. We're talking all things CES this week. That is the Consumer Electronics Show, as it lands in Las Vegas every January. And as we've done for, 4 years now, Stephen? We bring you guys an extra long edition of Double Tap TV so we can dive in a little deeper into the biggest consumer electronics show in the world.
And what a show it was this year, both on the traditional consumer tech side and on the accessibility front as well. You know, the innovations we're seeing each year really are helping pump us up for the year to come in tech, and especially in the world of accessible tech. Mark, what companies are we going to be talking with this week?
Okay, well, I'll tease just a few, okay, Stephen? We're going to be catching up with Biped, the company that's created a sensor-equipped vest to help people with low vision navigate the world around you. TCL is going to be joining us talking all about TVs, but also TV trends and home entertainment, plus some other great companies that I don't want to ruin right now because we've got a really cool show lined up for you.
Yeah, well, Mark, before the new year, we had a chance to catch up with someone at the CTA, that's the Consumer Technology Association itself, to see how preparations were going for the show. Now, John Kelley is the acting show director and executive vice president of CES, and we had a chance to speak to him leading up to CES.
John, first off, thanks for joining us here on Double Tap TV. CES is always an exhausting time, but this year you're expecting a pretty incredible turnout in terms of exhibitors and attendees, especially since the pandemic. I'm guessing that's a welcome change.
At the end of the day, people are really excited to be back face to face, and it's just, I think what the Zoom, we've seen a lot of virtual events, virtual conferences. CES 2021 happened in a virtual environment. But you can't replace those face-to-face moments, those serendipitous moments, whether they be walking the aisles of CES and you kind of stumble upon a booth and say, wow, look at this cool product. This is really interesting. You can't replace that in a virtual environment. So I do think, people are really excited to be back face-to-face, spend time with media, spend time with buyers, key partners and the such. And there's just a lot of excitement right now.
John, as you know, we talk all about accessibility here on Double Tap TV. Are you getting the sense, as we do, that accessibility is becoming more discussed now than it ever has been?
Definitely, absolutely. We're seeing, companies design products for a larger audience or for a specific audience to be more inclusive, and we're seeing that on display at CES. Another example of one of those best of innovations companies that I just mentioned, it's a company called DotPad, which has a pad. It's a graphic interface. It's a Braille interface that you can interact with using your fingers, so you can see images with your fingers. So we're seeing a lot of this play out at CES, and we actually, as an organization, have a foundation. Consumer Technology Association has a foundation that works closely with groups to, again, further the advancement of technology and make it more accessible for certain audiences.
John, that foundation that you talk about focuses on all the charity things that you guys do as a company. How important is that element of it to what you guys do day in and day out?
As an organization, our core mission is to grow and support the consumer technology industry. And we want that to be as inclusive as possible for everybody. It's supporting those types of companies and making investments in types of technologies that really are inclusive and bring more people into the fold to experience these technologies.
John, before we let you go, I wanted to touch base on something in the automotive side of things because, cars, it's not one of those things that used to be center stage at CES. But that has changed pretty dramatically, especially with autonomous driving and new car tech itself. This year, you have something interesting, a challenge?
We've partnered with a group called the Indy Autonomous Challenge, and so they run an autonomous driving competition. It's a global competition with university students from around the world that compete to basically have very fast autonomous vehicles. And they broke the land speed record last year. I think it topped out about 190 miles an hour. And that will be on display out at the Las Vegas Motor Speedway. So, typically in a show environment, at the convention center where our show is hosted, you're not going to see cars driving 190 miles an hour. It's just not physically possible. However, out at an environment like the Las Vegas Motor Speedway, you can see those autonomous vehicles going incredibly fast, which is, to me, is pretty exciting to see.
That is John Kelley, the Executive Vice President and Acting Show Director of CES, the Consumer Electronics Show. A phrase we'll be saying a lot this week. Thank you so much for being here on Double Tap TV. Now, Stephen, that interview, of course, took place before CES. But it's time to look forward and to some of the companies and stories that emerged this year.
Absolutely, Mark. And we've got an amazing show this week. So many great companies coming up, including Biped, Sedimentum, TCL, Braze Mobility, and more, as our Consumer Electronics Show CES 2023 1-hour special continues after a quick break.
You're watching Double Tap TV. Get involved. Follow us at Double Tap On Air or email us feedback@doubletaponair.com. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
Back with you on our CES 2023 edition of Double Tap TV, wrapping up the biggest consumer electronics show in the world. I wish I had a big voice for that.
Yeah.
Maybe next year we can afford that. Every year it happens in Las Vegas, Stephen.
Absolutely. Well, Mark, joining us now is the founder and CEO of Biped, Mael Fabien. We're excited to hear what's new from Biped this year at CES.
Thank you very much for hosting me.
Mael, for our audience at home who didn't meet you during our last year's CES show, because you were here with us last year unveiling what you guys are doing, can you remind us what Biped actually is?
So Biped is an obstacle avoidance system for blind and visually impaired people. The idea is that it's as close as it gets, replicates what self-driving cars do, but at a pedestrian level. So it has a couple of cameras that scan 170 degrees of field of view around the person on the harness that is worn on the shoulders. And then the AI software that we built is able to detect all sorts of obstacles that might have a risk of collision with you and warn the person using sound feedback. And the sound would typically feel like a parking assist of a car. So it's like a sequence of bip. If an obstacle is coming from the left, the person would hear bip, 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 but with a spatial, like a 3D effect, so that you know the obstacle is actually coming from the left.
Okay, so the big question from our audience is, what's new since the last time we spoke, Mael?
So we redesigned everything. Biped is now something that is, on the ergonomics standpoint, as a hardware product, a lot closer to something that can be deployed commercially. We redesigned a couple of the sensors also to make it run a lot faster. And we also added, on top of the obstacle detector, added the very first bricks of the GPS system that's going to come around Biped. And as a final addition, that's something we're going to announce very soon, but we have a partnership with a self-driving car manufacturer and one of their research institutes. We're actually taking software from a self-driving car research unit and onboarding, directly embedding it onto the Biped device directly.
You know, it's really interesting because we talk a lot about the last 10 yards problem as blind or partially sighted people. And of course, if you don't know what that means, it's really when you come out of a car or a taxi, someone might drop you off somewhere, and you can never find the front door of the building you're trying to get into. This sounds like something that could help here. You know, I know that Biped can do a lot more than that, but it's certainly one important feature that could be really useful to a lot of blind people, right?
Yeah. And I mean, we've had a couple of beta testers also communicated, their excitement for self-driving cars at some point, but always this last meters, last yards problems is, how do you find the actual, self-driving car? How do you ensure that the person's entering this self-driving bus by the, right front door or this kind of thing? So even if you push it that far into this self-driving car analogy, it becomes a problem. And just this is something where we're also very happy to have cameras directly on Biped and do the whole reasoning and the whole AI on camera's input, because that way, once we have someone's approaching the entrance of a store, we can just start reading out the names that we see on the frame, and that's a very handy way to find your exact destination a lot easier in the long run.
Mael, I know you know this, but there are a lot of products out there who are trying to become an alternative or even an equivalent to the white cane or a mobility aid or even a guide dog. Is that something that Biped is trying to be?
Biped's really trying to be a supplement to whatever the person is used to. To be honest, we ran a couple of tests where we asked people whether they could just fold away their white cane. And we tried to have one way or another the full spectrum of saying, hey, biped is this sole mobility device you're going to need. What I think there's two hurdles we've hit doing that. The first one is it's very hard for to give the good level of information, especially when there's small drop-offs, small holes that you might want to warn the user about. How do you make sure that this is not becoming too much fairly early on? And then the second one was the way people in the streets react to someone wearing biped directly, but not having a white cane. And turns out people don't pay attention to the visually impaired person walking around in the street as much as they would with having that person use a white cane. And this is really a layer where we just thought, let's remove the camera. That's actually one thing we added. We removed the camera that was filming the ground, and now on the first couple of feet, on the first meter, basically we don't have a camera anymore. This is for the guide dog or for the white cane, and we really frame biped as a supplement to this.
I'm a long-time white cane user myself, and I've tried a lot of these products, Mael, and there's just always too much information coming back, and it's a real sensory overload, frankly. But, something I wanted to ask you about. A lot of other companies are trying to build in ways to let their products work with other products. So, there's lots of ones out there now, like the Stellar Trek from Humanware, there's ARX Vision. Are you working on integrating with any of those types of devices?
That would be a very nice evolution, and I would be tempted to say natural evolution as a very next step for biped. Pushing this even further, envisioning integrations with services like some of the features of seeing AI would be a really cool evolution also. So I think we're going to work a lot on the interoperability of the device.
Mael, how will people get hold of biped? And of course, I have to ask the question, what price?
Everything is available on biped.ai. And we currently sell it as a subscription system only. So it's $129 a month. With 1 month of free trial, and as long as people want to use it, the subscription goes on. If after 1 year you want to cancel it, that's the minimum contract duration afterwards.
Wow, that's a great model, and honestly really affordable as well. Mael Fabien, thank you so much for updating us, and we can't wait to get our hands on this device and chat again. That is the founder and CEO of Biped, Mael Fabien.
We've got so much more on the way on the special CES edition of Double Tap TV. What do you say we talk about TVs and home entertainment when we come back right here?
Can't get enough Double Tap TV? Subscribe to the podcast and get your fill of Double Tap every day. Visit doubletaponair.com and follow us now. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
And we're back on our CES edition of Double Tap TV. Marc, so many things to cover from the show this year. BMW, of course, was the big keynote. But Canon had some amazing things on display, and talk about a visual display. The TVs on display this year as well from the big names were insane.
Definitely, and TVs are really the origin story here and of CES in general. It's always been consumer electronics and TVs that really flourish at the show. So naturally, let's get some insight on what's new in the space with our friend Bruce Walker. He's the product evangelist in a company whose lineup keeps growing beyond traditional TVs, and that company is TCL. Bruce, thank you for joining us on our special CES edition, Double Tap TV.
Hey, thanks for being here. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be back chatting with you about TCL and all sorts of cool stuff.
Bruce, before we get super specific, I want to talk about the industry kind of as a whole, where things are at, and what have you been planning for us?
Fantastic. As always, it's always interesting in our business, just trying to figure out all that stuff that our incredible engineering teams come up with, trying to find ways to relate that to consumers at the end of the day. In words that they'll understand and appreciate and realize the benefit they'll get out of all the great stuff that everybody in our industry in whole comes up with, and trying to make it relevant for customers so they understand it's time to get a new TV or time to get a new soundbar or something like that.
So let's talk about TVs. I mean, how can you not, right? When it comes to TVs and homes, what are the big must-haves this year? I mean, have we reached 8K yet?
So, I mean, if we're talking about, let's talk a primary TV. We won't get into the bedroom or rental, just the primary TV, the almost de facto first thing is 4K resolution. Every year there's an upping of the resolution, and 4K came into the spotlight a couple of years ago, and now pretty much everybody is on board. Streaming, obviously leading the way, but satellite and cable companies are pulling their weight. So resolution is the first thing.
How on earth do you make the decisions on what to include and what gets left behind on the cutting room floor? How do you weed through the noise and make sure that you're on par with what the others are doing and making sure the consumers get what they're asking for?
It's just a matter of us continually pushing the envelope in terms of what we can provide for our consumers. And the good news is most of the things that make a TV great for gaming will also make it good for watching TV, because it's brightness and response time and 120 hertz and things like that. So it's it's really looking. We like most industries have the behind the scenes guys that report not only sales numbers but sales trends and do background marketing. What's important to you in your next TV, and get things like that can help us understand what's important to our customers.
Bruce, TVs used to be a long-term purchase. I mean, you would buy one and then, it was on your wall for years, mostly because they were so expensive. But as prices have dropped, TVs are cheaper than our phones, actually, these days, when you think about it. So, has that cycle shifted? Are people buying TVs more often?
It's accelerated a little bit more in that the hand-me-down process is a little different in a house. Went through it a little bit before I became an empty nester a few years ago, but your son is not going to accept crappy TV, for lack of a better term.
And of course, let's not forget the fact that major blockbusters, in some cases, are coming out on streaming services at the same time as they're appearing in theaters. That is TCL's product evangelist, Bruce Walker. Thank you so much for joining us here on Double Tap TV, Bruce. Stephen, it kind of makes you want to go out and get a new TV, doesn't it?
Oh, well, any excuse for me, frankly, to buy tech. But yes, absolutely. I have a wall to my left that could do with a TV on it. So yes, maybe one from TCL would be quite nice. But look, we're just scraping the surface here from this amazing year at CES. After a quick break, a company looking to empower people to be as independent as they can for as long as they can. Stick around.
You're watching Double Tap TV. Get involved. Follow us at Double Tap On Air or email us feedback@doubletaponair.com. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
Stephen, every year we look to speak with companies that we, A, haven't spoken to before, but also have a widespread appeal and could be useful for anyone, not just people with disabilities.
Absolutely, and Sedimentum is one of those companies. Now, with us now is Sandro, one of the co-founders and the CEO of Sedimentum, based in Switzerland. Thank you so much for being with us on this special CES show.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Stephen. It's a pleasure to be here.
Sandro, what your company is doing is really interesting to me. You're catering to an aging population who don't want to live in assisted living facilities, who want essentially their independence maintained as long as possible while surrounded by loved ones, who want to make sure they're safe. And you're using tech to make this happen. So how did you fuse the two together?
Yeah, so that's an extremely interesting angle of perspective to have the challenge, like you have mentioned before. First, like you have explained quite concisely, that there is a tendency and a trend that all of us specifically try to be as long as possible in the private homes, right? So this is nothing new. This is something which has always been there, but we see that with the demographic changes as well. I mean, everybody tend to get older on a global scale, and therefore the demand is increasing, that we need to have different options as well to taking care of our loved ones. And yes, families are often, meanwhile, we have the same situation in Switzerland, I'm assuming the same is in the US, that families are widespread over huge distances, because that's part of like growing up. You go to university, your parents are still in the same place. And if there is this gap in between, there are some certain risks involved if we are getting older, that we need to take care of ourselves in a different manner. And this is how we tackle the problem that we solve there, the gap of, we have caregivers, for example, family members, we have residents, which are, it's in their best interest to stay in their loved homes, because our homes are our own castles and nobody wants to move out of there. But still there arise safety concerns, because safety concerns are often the reason why we have to leave.
Sandro, there's no surprise that there's a lot of tech out there already built in to the devices that we have, like our smartphones, that we use every single day. But that's obviously more mainstream. How do you make sure your product actually stands out and is different?
The Safe Living solution, this is like the name of the suite which we are offering, and there is a fundamental core component. This is the contactless emergency detector. So it looks like a smoke detector. So that's what you need to have to imagine by yourself. It will be installed at the ceiling of the private home of the individuals. And we have the capabilities of detect with this emergency detector all kind of emergency in the private home without the necessity that the resident has to wear or operate anything. So no buttons need to be pressed. It's a fully automatic system that you get the help you need. And we are not leveraging like camera or microphone. No, it's a proprietary chip we have designed by ourselves, where we are leveraging electromagnetic waves, where we are capable of sense the tiniest movements wherever they're occurring in the room. And then the main field of expertise at Sedimentum is interpreting and analyzing this data in real time to differentiate reliably, for example, between you can do like your yoga exercise, sport exercise at home, or a cat jumping around. We are able to differentiate it from this type of emergency situation.
You know, that's super interesting because you're giving the stakeholders, you know, the family, peace of mind while also giving the users dignity and privacy by not including cameras and microphones. They don't feel like they're under lock and key or being watched.
This is privacy by design, because this is like one of the core components where we are coming from as well, where the company has our roots. So we are coming from the institutional healthcare domain in Switzerland. So I was working before as a cybersecurity officer in a hospital for mental diseases. And 5.5 years ago, I was a member of a think tank with the head of nursing staff and chief residential doctors. And this is where everything started. So privacy is in our DNA. And this is exactly the reason why we have built this proprietary chip, because it's a privacy preserving technology.
Sandro, when you're going through this process and people are actually using your solution here, what's been the reaction? Like, have there been any wow moments with you or from your customer base while you've been designing this?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, as we are really now, we have paying customers. The subscriptions are ramping up in Switzerland, and we're trying to get that as much market penetration as possible. And there were a lot of moments where we received handwritten letters, like thank you cards from families and the residents, like that this was the reason they could stay longer in their private homes. And I think those kind of messages are really encouraging, that you see that you have truly have an impact of the life of the individuals. But as well, we had more than once, like those type of thank you cards from family members which were describing their feelings. This is the first time they were able to grab a coffee during the afternoon without the concern that they are not at home with their mom.
Well, we'll look forward to hitting the mainstream and talking about it soon. CEO of Sedimentum, Sandro Cilurzo, thank you so much for joining us on Double Tap TV. Marc, I have to tell you, I love the stories that we're hearing like this from CES this year. It really takes things to a personal level, right?
Yeah, it helps kind of keep things grounded a bit and keeping it relevant to the audience, right? So how are you feeling? Are you ready to dive into more from CES this year? I know it's a lot, and I know that we're only going to scrape the surface, to be perfectly honest. We use that term a lot, but with so many exhibitors and so many announcements coming from CES, there's no way even in an hour we can touch upon it. This is why this is always the fun part. This lays the groundwork for like the next 20 episodes of Double Tap TV.
Absolutely. Well, look, let's get more on because there is so much more to talk about.
Okay, when we come back, a company whose products are being introduced for the first time at CES in the wearable space. It is Double Tap TV.
Can't get enough Double Tap TV? Subscribe to the podcast and get your fill of Double Tap every day. Visit doubletaponair.com and follow us now. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
We're back on our CES 1 hour special. I am Marc Aflalo.
And I'm Stephen Scott. Now, Marc, this next company we're going to talk to has a new product that is being showcased to the world for the first time. It's one of the things I love about CES because it's not always about what's available and out now, like, you know, TVs that we've been talking about. Sometimes it's about getting a look into the future to see what technology is coming down the road.
Definitely. And Nathan Deutsch is the CEO of Lighthouse Tech, a company that definitely fits the bill, and joins us now here on Double Tap TV. Nathan, thank you so much for being here.
My pleasure. Absolutely. Thanks for inviting me.
Okay, Nathan, tell us about what Lighthouse Tech has been working on.
So at CES this year, we've been displaying our product prototype, which we call LTH01. I'm holding it in my hands right now, and it is an eyewear frame developed for people who are blind and vision impaired. And its sole purpose at the moment is to detect obstacles in front of the user as they're walking around and warn them using vibratory feedback. So right now you're going to maybe hear some vibrations. That's because I'm fooling around with the sensors here. Everything is in the temple of the frame. These are prototypes, so it's 3D printed. It's not the final version. It's got a bit of a different feel to it. But the front is acetate, and the idea is to get these as close to the size and the weight and the feeling and the look of a regular fashion eyewear frame.
So these are smart glasses, but not in the way that people describe them normally, with a visual component where they overlay things on the world. These are not those, right?
That's absolutely correct. We are really trying to solve the problem of obstacle detection and avoidance. There's a number of different challenges that we're fully aware of when it comes to getting around safely and getting around confidently in indoor and outdoor environments. Right now, we're not on the market yet, but what we're aiming to do with these is to provide people with confidence not to knock their heads or upper bodies where the white cane is not effective.
Nathan, could these glasses be linked to our phones and used with different types of apps, like GPS, for example?
Our thought around that is that this is really, the eyewear is a platform. So, of course, we're not the only ones out there trying to develop stuff like this. We hoped we were, but turns out we're not. And we know that there are other solutions out there that try to do something similar or try to put different kinds of functionality into the eyewear frame. This is something that we can certainly use to receive and transmit signals as well. The chip, as I said, is connected, so we can put processing in the smartphone. We can also, and I think this is where we aim to go with the first version, and I hope we'll keep it this way as well, is something that's really standalone.
Nathan, I wish we had more time to talk to you about this. It's incredible. Nathan Deutsch, thank you so much for joining us and previewing this cool new tech. That is Lighthouse Tech. Marc, really cool stuff from CES this year, right?
Absolutely, Stephen. And I want to jump right into another guest who's been standing by very patiently. Pooja Viswanathan is the CEO of a Toronto-based company, Braze Mobility, and they're showcasing at CES this year. Now, Braze has a solution built to make wheelchairs smart. Pooja, thank you for joining us on Double Tap TV.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Pooja, tell us how you describe your solution.
Yeah. So for those who don't know, majority of wheelchair users actually experience accidents, which often can lead to property damage or wheelchair damage, in some cases hospitalization. And so at Braze Mobility, we've developed the world's first blind spot sensors that can be attached to any wheelchair, essentially transforming it into a smart wheelchair. So our system detects obstacles in the environment and then offers feedback to the user through intuitive lights, sounds, and vibrations.
Pooja, one of the things that really stands out to me is the independence that your device gives to wheelchair users. The added dimension of awareness really can enable people. Have you heard the same thing from your user base?
Yeah, it's been terrific. I mean, we have a very wide range of kind of different scenarios that the sensors are being used in. And so we have had individuals, referring back to that same scenario, individuals in long-term care who either were not even being considered for power mobility or were long-term power wheelchair users, but the staff was starting to see accidents and they weren't quite sure why those accidents were happening. And unfortunately, it often tends to be that if there's any underlying diagnosis of dementia, for example, any sort of cognitive impairment, then often the conclusion tends to be, oh, it's probably that their cognition's deteriorating and they can't drive anymore, which is not always the case. And so in some of the scenarios that we've helped out in, we've essentially discovered that the residents were in fact very capable of driving. They just didn't have eyes in the back of their head. And so, that nobody does. And they were bumping into things because they were essentially backing up into stuff, or they had, parts of their wheelchair that was simply a blind spot in itself. So if you think about extended leg rest, for example, right? Like it's really hard to see the end of your feet. And so, that's the sort of scenario. We have clients that are driving in a tilted position, which also then makes it really hard to see in the sides and then the back. So in some sense, the wheelchair itself, the configuration that they're driving in can be a barrier to their visibility and their spatial awareness.
So how does this actually work, Pooja? What's involved in the device?
Yeah, would you like me to show you a demo of it?
Well, that would be amazing.
What I'm holding in my hand right now is our sensor system. So on the bottom, I just powered that up right now, but I'm going to turn it off just so I can explain how everything works first. So on the bottom, we have what we call the Sentinel. This is the bigger sensor that I'm pointing to, which typically gets installed in the rear of the power wheelchair or a manual wheelchair. And it consists of 5 different sensors, and the sensors provide roughly a coverage of about 180 degrees horizontally and about 45 to 50 degrees vertically. So that's the coverage of the main Sentinel system. And then we also have a smaller sensor that I'm pointing to right now, which is called the Echo Head. This particular Echo Head can be installed anywhere around the chair, and it provides more targeted coverage. It provides about 45 to 50 degrees of horizontal and vertical coverage. So it kind of looks like a cone, like a 45-degree cone. And generally speaking, the way we install the sensor is we'll have the Sentinel in the rear and the 2 Echo Heads, one on either side in the front. And that way, if a client is, going through doorways or tight spaces like elevators and so on, they'll have that coverage in the rear as well as the periphery.
Pooja, let me stop you for just 1 second so I can describe in a little bit more detail what you're holding on to over there. So the bigger sensor you described at the bottom of the array that you're holding is about the size of a modern-day smartphone and consists of 2 rows of sensors, so 6 in total. There's 3 on the top and 3 on the bottom. They look like little round cameras, and obviously those are proximity sensors that point in different directions, obviously to determine where people are in relation to things around them. Now, the smaller Echo Head, which you referred to, is just positioned just above that on the array that you're holding, but it's meant to go on the front of a wheelchair. That's about the quarter of the size of the bigger one, so it's obviously, it looks like a little column with 2 round sensors, one on top of the other, that looks exactly like cameras as well.
And then finally, we have the controller, which essentially has the switches and buttons that are used to control the system and provides the visual feedback as well as the auditory feedback.
And that control that you're showing us right there on screen is about half the size of a smartphone with 4 lights on it, which you're going to demonstrate in a second. And there's a big red button on the bottom right-hand corner.
So I'm going to go ahead and turn that on by pushing the big button there. That will turn the system on. And the first thing that we'll see is a blue light in the middle. That one blue light means that we're in short range mode. So in short range mode, the way that it works is if an object is detected within 2 feet, like my laptop is being detected right now, we'll see a yellow light for warning. And if an obstacle is detected within 1 foot, we'll see a red light for danger. So I'm going to bring this closer to my laptop now, and then I'm going to actually use my hand so you can see how the lights follow my hand. And so as my hand moves from right to left, the lights also move with my hand. And so we have the yellow light for warning, red light for danger, 2 feet and 1 foot threshold. And we're seeing those lights in the bottom row because the bottom row corresponds to obstacles in the rear. Now, any obstacles that are detected in the front will get, we'll have the lights indicate on the top row. So the yellow light that we're seeing on the top right now corresponds to the little Echo Head. So if I put my hand in front of the Echo Head, you see that turns red on that top row there. And we can have up to 3 Echo heads that are installed, and they would all show up on the 3 LED lights on the top row.
Now that's a demo if I ever heard of one before. Pooja, where can people get one of these if they wanted to right now?
We typically will work with a wheelchair provider. So whoever it was that typically will provide the client's wheelchair is also the one that will provide these sensors. And that way, it's a much easier process. The wheelchair can either come set up with the installed with the system when the wheelchair is initially purchased, or it can be installed as an add-on by the wheelchair provider.
Amazing. Pooja Viswanathan, thank you for being here with us and representing more Canadian companies in accessibility.
Stephen, this has been one amazingly packed show. For more information on Braze Mobility, you can check out their website, which is brazemobility.com.
But we're not done yet. So let's take a quick break and we'll wrap up this 1 hour special with some other CES 2023 highlights.
You're watching Double Tap TV. Get involved. Follow us at Double Tap On Air or email us feedback@doubletaponair.com. Double Tap TV will be right back. You're watching Double Tap TV.
We're back to wrap up our CES 2023 special edition of Double Tap TV. Stephen, we've spoken to some pretty cool companies, but to say that we're just scratching the surface is an understatement because there are hundreds, if not thousands, of exhibitors and companies that show up at the Consumer Electronics Show each and every single year. So we will be talking to a lot of these companies over the coming weeks, catching up and spending a little bit more time than just, couple minutes during CES to focus on what they're really doing as a whole for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. And, thank goodness we have a daily podcast as well called Double Tap that you can catch all this news on as well, right? Which is kind of cool. We can talk about all of this stuff and all of the accessibility news and angles out of all of the news that comes out as well. There's so much to talk about. And, of course, keep tuned to Double Tap TV because we will be talking more and more about this over the next weeks and months.
I did want to throw in some honorable mentions in terms of some kind of quick things that were announced this year. Shall we? You want to dive into some of them?
Yeah, let's do this. I want to start with what seems like a small thing, right? If I'm being totally honest. A new MagSafe case from Otterbox. Now, you might think, well, who cares about a phone case? But this is interesting. It's called the Symmetry series, and it has a built-in grip that pops up, and it protects, like all other Otterbox cases do, and also works with MagSafe, which is pretty nice.
That's pretty cool. I like that. I like that option a lot, especially the fact that you can actually use MagSafe on it, which is pretty cool. Now, we talked to TCL earlier. Bruce Walker was on the show. And TVs are definitely on front and center at CES every single year. LG had a 97-inch TV that is so super thin, and it can wirelessly receive 4K video at 120 hertz. The whole purpose of this is obviously designed to clear up the clutter in your room. So you just have the TV on the wall, and you don't have to worry about, big boxes and accessories to it. You can just stream stuff to it. Also in the TV space, Roku, the makers of the popular media streaming device, they launched their own branded TVs as well as a reference for design for their partners, which means basically they're going to design a TV and say, you guys are partners, this is what you should be doing, this is how you do it. Kind of like how Microsoft does with the Surface devices.
Yeah, and it's interesting because one company which did not showcase televisions was Sony, but one thing they did announce at CES this year, which I thought was very interesting and very exciting for us, was a new accessible controller for PlayStation. This is an amazing thing, and of course it's really our big first accessible tech story of the year, frankly, from CES. What a great place to showcase this. But really this is a new style dual layer device that can be customized to whatever you need it to be able to do in order for you to be able to play a game on PlayStation. So for example, if you can only play one-handed, or you need to play it with a joystick rather than using actual physical buttons, this is a new style device, and it's quite a different design. Circular design, clock face design with buttons all around the edges. It also has a joystick at the bottom of it, and you can customize all of that to suit you. So they've kind of taken away from that Xbox adaptive controller design, and they've worked on that, and they've looked at what they've done at Microsoft with this, and instead of just saying, hey, let's just copy that, they've decided to go off and do this themselves, which is, I think, absolutely fantastic.
What I actually love about this announcement is kind of reading into some of the backstory behind it. Number one, the fact that they use CES as a showcase for it is truly impressive, and it's about time that people are taking advantage of CES to showcase accessibility. The other thing that I've noticed is there's a lot of conversation online about, oh yeah, well, Microsoft did this with their adaptive kit years ago. You know, forget about that for a second. Who cares who came first when it comes to technology like this? Yep. This is here now. It took whatever time it took to build. They have their own spin on it, and I guarantee you people are going to be into it. And people are going to, you know, everybody uses a PlayStation, everybody uses an Xbox, everybody has their favorite. So to now have that choice and not have to worry about how to use it is absolutely imperative.
Absolutely. Well, look, I want to mention some other companies as well, because smartwatches were also on display. Citizen announcing a number of new smartwatches that use AI to determine your level of alertness. Wow, I'd be kind of worried about wearing that. Designed with IBM AI and even NASA technology. I hope it can tell the time okay. Harman unveiled a new turntable for those getting back into vinyl. That's, of course, a big thing at the moment. JBL, also owned by Harman, debuted a true wireless earbud with a touchscreen smart case. Now that does sound pretty cool.
ThinkPad have unveiled the Think Phone. This is Motorola's attempt, or Moto's attempt, at getting in new business or business companies, business clients, into the Think Phone lineup of things. What stands out about this phone? Obviously security. That's why the business, world is going to gravitate towards this one. I guess, there was a hole left in the business side of smartphones when BlackBerry kind of made their exit kind of unceremoniously over time and over evolution of the smartphone. So there is that hole where the people want these secure phones, and Moto thinks that they might have a solution here with this one.
Yeah, but hang on, that's going to run Android, right? So, I mean, if it was running BlackBerry, I think I'd be interested in that. And I kind of hoped that this would be... I did see this story at the end of 2022, and I thought this would be great to see the return of BlackBerry, or at least a competitor to come out against Google and Apple, because it feels like those two are just... They have everything at the moment, and every device that comes out that doesn't have an Apple badge on it is Android, and it just feels it'd be kind of nice to see some competition or something different. Yeah, a Lenovo ThinkPhone could have been it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bigger conversation to be had there in terms of anybody trying to go up against iOS and Android. I don't know if any company has the kahunas to really go down that road, because that's going to cost billions of dollars to try and woo consumers over to a new platform. And I think that some people will look at that and say, what's the point? Why would we go into this knowing we're going to have to go through this extremely, extremely tough uphill battle? And I can't help but agree with that perspective sometimes.
Well, true, but then, Microsoft did have the Windows Phone. Granted, it didn't last very long, but that was a great little device. And, again... having some competition in the market is good, but we saw Microsoft exit the market. We saw Amazon with the Fire Phone leave the market, and again, I wonder sometimes if that would be a welcome return, especially on the cost front, because Amazon could sell it so cheaply in comparison to other devices out there, and it is based off Android, so there's a similarity there.
Stephen, the best part about doing these CES shows and really just having CES happen at the beginning of the years is that it starts conversations like this that we can go into way deeper on future episodes of Double Tap TV. So make sure you're locked into the season and you continue to tune in, because we've got great stories like this lined up for you. Asus announced a new Xbox controller with an LED display on it. Amazon is opening up their Sidewalk platform to third parties that lets people, piggyback off your Wi-Fi network at home. Other things like Apple Fitness Plus adding kickboxing and AI voices in their narration service for audiobooks. So many things announced at CES that we'll be talking about over the coming weeks, the coming months, and probably the coming years, Stephen.
Oh! Before we go, one final thing to mention, because you know me, I love keyboards. Dell announcing a new keyboard which has got touch controls in there as well. So you've got the physical keys, but you also have touch keys as well. So I think we're starting to see a move away from traditional keyboards.
Well, do stay tuned, of course, not only to this episode, but you can check us out on YouTube and all our social media. We've got all that information lined up for you. Thank you for being here with us for our CES 2023 edition of Double Tap TV. On behalf of Stephen Scott, I am Marc Aflalo. We'll chat again next week.
Thanks for watching Double Tap. Send us your feedback to feedback@doubletaponair.com. Leave us a voicemail at 1-877-803-4567. Hosted by Marc in Montreal and Stephen Scott in Glasgow. Producer Marc Aflalo. Editing and graphics Jordan Steves. Voiceover Anna Vicino. Social media Wendy Kaufman. Integrated Described Video Specialist M. Williams. Supervising Producer Michelle Dudas. Manager Programming AMI TV Lizanne Gagne. Director Content Development and Production Karen Nye. VP Content Development and Operations John Melville. President and CEO David Arrington. Copyright 2023 Accessible Media Inc.